I'm live. I'm reading chapter 8 out of Many Lifetimes. It's a collaboration between Joan Marshall Grant and her then husband Dennis Kelsy. She passed away in 1989. This is entitled Parenthood, and it is by Dennis Kelsy. And on the top here it says, 1. Would you really like a baby? And 2. Would it be baby really like you? The effects which parents may have upon their children have been the subject of endless consideration. But there is an aspect of parenthood which has tended to be neglected: the effects which a child may have upon its parents. Adoption societies are so well aware of the stresses which a child will impose that they subject prospective foster parents to a prolonged and detailed investigation. This will begin with inquiries into their financial circumstances and prospects, the accommodation they have to offer, and every aspect of their environment, and will extend to their religion, their work, their interests, and their habits. Information will be required not only about their present state of health, but also about the medical history of themselves and their families. Is there any familial tendency, for instance, to cancer or heart trouble, or any other condition suggesting a reduced expectation of life? On this question, the nature of their favorite recreation may have been an obvious bearing. Then will come an expert assessment of the psychological state of the couple. In arriving at this, the Adoption Society will go into the mental history of the family of each of them, as well as the mental history of the couple themselves. And they will not merely want to find that there were no freak nervous breakdowns, but there is a positive evidence of stability in their records of performance, both at school and at work. They will be deeply interested in the strength of the relationship between the couple, and will listen with a particular shrewd ear to the reasons each gives for wishing to adopt a child. This may throw a most valuable light upon the vital question about which the Adoption Society is seeking assurance. Is the couple capable of the task which they want to undertake? For husband and wife cannot be a benign influence upon the child unless, mentally and physically, they are sufficiently robust to withstand the pressures which will be involved. Yet even when assured that a couple would be suitable foster parents, this is not the end of the matter. They are not simply handed the child who is next in the queue. On the contrary, they will have to wait until the adoption agency can offer them a child who is likely to make a relationship with these particular foster parents, which will be mutually satisfactory. The arrival of a child will test 3 fundamental factors in every marriage: the personality of the husband, the personality of the wife, and the link between them. At different times, the strain may be on one factor more than another, but the other 2 can never escape entirely, and if one factor succumbs, then the marriage may be wrecked. Such an occurrence may undeniably be detrimental to the child, and this aspect of the matter seldom falls to catch the public eye. But it tends to be forgotten that the parents are also people, that they are too in a process of evolution, and that a rupture in their relationship may be a sad and serious obstacle to their progress. This is especially sad if, at the time they propose to embark upon parenthood, anyone with sufficient insight could have predicted that its demands would be too much for them, and that they should have been encouraged to concentrate further upon all that is implied in strengthening the relationship between themselves. But in contrast to the rigorous selection procedure to which people who are thoroughly familiar with both sides of the picture deem it necessary to subject prospective foster parents, no step at all are taken to ensure that the ordinary married couple will be able to withstand the burden which even the most congenial child will inevitably impose upon them. Instead, their fitness for parenthood is taken for granted, and within weeks or months after their marriage, they may actually have pressure put upon them to embark upon the operation without delay. A considerable number do so, and the stage for potential disaster is set. Let us start from the premise that the female body is subject to a recurrent urge to breed. Many a woman never feels better than when she's pregnant, especially with her first child, until the sheer mechanics of advanced pregnancy becomes obtrusive. Some of her well-being may be due to the fact that during this period her relationship with her husband is probably happier than ever. No matter how much he may have loved his wife before, he will feel especially tender and protective towards her now that she is carrying their child. And the knowledge that ahead of her lies an inescapable event of at least considerable discomfort, an undeniable element of danger, adds a sense of poignant anxiety. After the birth, the first phase of the breeding urge is responsible for the many-faceted joy which the mother derives from her infant. And illogical though it may be, there is a certain pleasure and satisfaction in having achieved fatherhood. For a time, the husband cannot do too much for his wife, and neither of them too much for the baby. Amongst animals in the wild, this final phase persists until the young are capable of feeding for themselves. But the human mother is fortunate if it endures to the end of breastfeeding, and it is when these instinctual feelings have subsided in the mother and the novelty has worn off for fatherhood, that for both parents the task of parenthood really begins. This task may be expected to last for a minimum of 16 years, and is never without hazards, for the mother, for the father, and for the link between them. Now the presence of a baby in the house demands that there is someone on duty for each of the 24 hours. But the fact of being the baby's mother does not necessarily equip her with a temperament to fulfill her maternal obligations, virtually single-handed, as in these days so many women have to do, for the strains accumulate. Her sleep will be broken, and an endless series of small crises are liable to interrupt every activity, every attempt at concentrated thought. The demand for regular meals imposes a certain rigidity upon her day. She must resign herself to the fact that unless she has been able to make other arrangements, she cannot leave the house without taking the baby with her, and then must set her pace to this or to his. When the baby becomes mobile, she knows she must be ceaselessly watchful to guard against the obvious sources of accidents. Open fires, projecting saucepan handles, and so on. But soon she learns that if she takes her eyes off him for a moment, he may still contrive to injure himself in some way which has escaped her imagination. A little later, she will have to endure endless demands for a favorite story, and stern correction if she misplaces a single word. Yet such factors touch only the fringe of what is involved in the care of the most healthy, placid, and congenial baby. I have not touched upon such matters as the feelings of personal inadequacy that may be evoked by periods of crying for which the cause cannot be found and which nothing short of exhaustion seems to abate, feelings which can easily be transformed into anger with a child and so have to be rigidly suppressed. How easily this transformation can occur, I have learned through personal experience. At about 11:30 one night during my first marriage, the baby began to cry. Changing her diaper with particular care to see that no pin went astray brought no relief, and the offer of a supplementary bottle was indignantly, not to say contemptuously, brushed aside. Picking her up and carrying her around for half an hour was equally ineffective. Feeling challenged, not only as a father but as a physician, I went to work. I tested the rigidity of her neck for signs of early meningitis. I looked in her mouth for an erupting tooth, and at her throat against the possibility of an infection. I fetched an horoscope and inspected her each ear, slipping her sleeping suit down to her knees. I examined her chest, her abdomen, and, to be on the safe side, examined her rectally as well. Satisfied at least that she was neither brewing nor suffering any serious condition, I put her back in her cot, but the crying continued until, even more exhausted than I was myself, she fell asleep. It was during these endless 2 hours that I realized how easily the inadequacy she was causing me to feel about myself could have been turned into anger against her. I'm thankful this did not happen, for in the morning the cause of my ineffectiveness was revealed. I had failed to notice that the elastic on one foot of her sleeping suit had become wedged between 2 toes and had caused a deep indentation. It is no reflection upon a woman's value as a human being if these frustrations and anxieties of which she bears the brunt drive her to the limit of her tolerance. If this limit is exceeded, the result may be a nervous breakdown, which may obviously have disastrous consequences for her and for the family as a whole. But a more insidious danger to her relationship with her husband is that she reaches a state of chronic tiredness in which she is unable to see any pleasure anywhere, of chronic irritation which may cause her to find fault with everyone, especially with her husband. It will take more sympathy and understanding on his part than many husbands possess, if he is not to react defensively and make matters worse. At best, he develops around himself a psychological barrier to protect him against his wife's reproaches, and gradually there develops an atmosphere of his and hers, the antithesis of the ours, which is the essence of a true marriage. But there are women, even women who previously had wide intellectual and physical interests, who find that the almost single-handed care of a baby and a toddler, which he soon becomes, is the most rewarding activity of all. For such women, the danger is that she may become engrossed in her child at the expense of the link with her husband. He may accept that the baby's paraphernalia are an inevitable addition to the furniture, but it is improbable that he likes it. He may accept that the baby has to be bathed and be fed at 6 o'clock in the evening, and that since his wife cannot be in 2 places at once, he must forego that drink together when he gets home, which used to be one of the happiest features of their day. But he will miss it. He may accept innumerable small ways in which it is the baby who has the first claim on his wife's time and attention, but, and so imperceptibly that he scarcely realizes it is happening, he begins to find interests outside the home increasingly attractive. And I will stop this here and continue later. This is Kelsy in Chapter 8.